The rain began without warning, sharp needles of cold slicing through the stagnant dusk air. Samantha barely noticed. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, soaked blouse clinging to her skin like the regret she wore every day. She stood at the edge of the bridge overlooking the bay, her eyes fixed on the black churning waters below. This spot had always drawn her when the weight in her chest became too much to bear. People rushed by under umbrellas, huddled and hurried, unaware of the storm inside, the woman standing motionless like a statue carved by sorrow. The world, it seemed, moved forward while she remained stuck in place, haunted, hollowed. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't reach for it. She had grown used to silence, preferred it even. Words no longer brought comfort. They only reminded her of what had been lost, what had been taken. A year ago, Samantha had a life, a home, a husband, a dream of a child who would never be born. Now all she had were nightmares and a lockbox of secrets buried too deep to unearth. The voice that finally broke through the rain was gentle, familiar. Samantha? She flinched. Only one person still said her name like it meant something. Detective Mara Callahan. Samantha didn't turn around. You're following me now? You left the station without saying a word again. I told you everything I remember. You told me what you wanted me to hear. Mara's voice edged closer. We both know that's not the same thing. Samantha finally turned, the pain behind her eyes almost too raw to look at. Why are you still involved? They closed the case. They said it was an accident. They were wrong, Mara said softly, and you know it. A flash of thunder cracked the sky, illuminating the lines of grief etched into Samantha's face. She was 34, but looked 10 years older. I don't have anything else, Samantha whispered. I don't want to remember more. That's not the same as being done with the truth. The words hung between them like a question too heavy to answer. Samantha took a step back, her heel catching on the slick edge of the sidewalk. Mara reached out instinctively, steadying her. I'm fine, Samantha said quickly, shrugging her off. You're not, but you will be. Samantha shook her head. I've told you what I saw that night. The shadows, the man at the gate, the fire. I screamed. I tried to stop it, but I was too late. You were drugged, Mara said. You were set up. Then why didn't they find anything in my system? They didn't look hard enough. There was a beat of silence, followed by the shrill ring of Mara's phone. She glanced at the screen and answered quickly. Callahan. Her eyes narrowed as she listened. Where? I'm 10 minutes away. Hold them there. She ended the call and looked up. That was the forensics lab. They reprocessed the samples from the house fire. There's a new match on the prints found near the garage door. Samantha's heart thudded in her chest. Whose? Mara's voice dropped. Isaac Renner. Samantha's world stopped. Isaac Renner. Her husband's old business partner. A man she hadn't seen in years. A man who had vanished without a trace after embezzling money and threatening revenge. He's supposed to be dead, Samantha whispered. Mara nodded grimly. He's not, and he was there that night. Samantha took an unsteady breath. The sound of the rain grew distant, muffled beneath the thunder of her pulse. Everything she thought she'd buried was clawing its way back to the surface. What do I do? She asked. Mara's eyes locked onto hers. You stop running. You fight. For the first time in months, Samantha felt something flicker in her chest. Not hope. No, she wasn't ready for that. But something just as dangerous. Resolve. They arrived at the precinct just before nightfall, drenched and exhausted. The forensic report was waiting. Isaac's prints weren't just near the garage. He had touched the gas canister used to ignite the blaze. There was another partial print, the tech said. Not enough for a full ID, but we're working on it. Samantha stared at the image on the screen, her mind racing. Isaac had always hated her husband, Ben. He blamed him for their company's collapse. But murder? A chill ran through her. Why now? After all these years? Mara's face darkened. That's what we're going to find out. Samantha looked out the precinct window at the city lit up in fractured neon through the rain. She was tired, so deeply tired, but something was changing inside her. For the first time, she didn't want to disappear. She wanted to know the truth, even if it destroyed what was left of her. Later that night, she sat in her apartment, the one she refused to sell even after the fire that had taken Ben's life. She opened the drawer of the vanity and pulled out a small black notebook. Inside were fragments of memories, dates, names, questions. One entry stood out, scribbled hastily the day after Ben's funeral. Isaac, warehouse, 117 South Shore, Tuesday nights, why? She hadn't dared look into it. She'd been too afraid, but now fear was no longer enough to stop her. She grabbed her coat and keys. It was time. The address, in her notebook, 117 South Shore, was a decaying industrial zone tucked against the edge of the city like a scar no one cared to conceal. Warehouses, long abandoned and bleeding rust, lined the waterfront like sleeping giants. The road was broken and littered, the only light coming from the sporadic hum of flickering lampposts and the distant glow of the city skyline across the river. Samantha had no plan, just the address, her flashlight, and the brittle determination cracking through her nerves like thunder on glass. She parked a block away, kept the car running. Her breath fogged the inside of the windshield as she stared at the darkened shell of the building ahead. This was where Isaac had come, every Tuesday night. What for? She slipped from the car, her steps silent on the wet pavement. The night was unnaturally quiet. No traffic, no wind, just the steady beat of her heart thudding in her ears. She reached the warehouse gates and ducked through a hole in the chain-link fence. The metal creaked behind her like a whisper from the past. The side door was padlocked but rusted through. One good kick and it gave way with a groan, revealing a vast, echoing interior. Moonlight poured through shattered skylights, casting jagged shadows across the dusty concrete floor. She moved slowly, her flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. Stacks of pallets and crates were piled high, but it was the back of the warehouse that drew her eye. A makeshift office, partially boarded up, with yellowed windows and a single flickering light. She approached, heart pounding. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the room was cluttered. Old files, a bulletin board covered in newspaper clippings and red thread. Photographs. Her photograph. Her blood ran cold. Pinned in the center was a candid shot of her walking out of a cafe. Beside it, a photo of Ben, smiling, unaware. Below them, scrawled in bold ink, "She doesn't know, but she will." She backed away slowly, dread curling through her gut. "What are you doing here?" The voice stopped her dead. She turned. Isaac Renner stood in the doorway, gaunt and wild-eyed, a pistol dangling casually in one hand. He was supposed to be dead. But there he was. Older, thinner, but very much alive. His mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Samantha," he said, stepping into the room, "you found me." She froze. You set the fire. You killed Ben." "No," he said. "You did." The room swam. "What?" "You handed him everything on a silver platter," Isaac growled. "All your husband ever did was betray me, steal my work, take my company, and you stood beside him, smiling, pretending you didn't know." "I didn't know anything," Samantha shouted. "I never even understood your fight." "You didn't want to. Just like you don't want to see the truth now." He moved closer. "Ben wasn't the man you thought he was." She shook her head, backing toward the door. "You're lying." "Then explain this." He tossed a file on the table. It slid open, revealing financial records. Offshore accounts, coded transfers. Ben's name was on every page. Your loving husband was laundering money through shell companies. For years. Guess who helped him set it up? Samantha's knees buckled. No, this can't be real. Oh, it's very real. I tried to expose him. He framed me. I lost everything. Then he came crawling back for one last deal. Said he wanted to make things right. Said you were pregnant. Said we could start over. But it was a lie. A setup. He tried to kill me. Samantha's head spun. He's dead, Isaac. Isaac's voice was cold, because someone beat him to it. A silence fell. Then, softly. What do you mean? I didn't light the fire, Isaac said. I saw him go inside, but someone was already there, a third person. I never saw their face, just the shadow. And then, boom. He looked her dead in the eye. You've been chasing the wrong ghost, Samantha. Suddenly, there was movement outside the window, a quick flicker. Too fast to be wind. Isaac noticed it too. He stiffened, cocked the gun and moved toward the door. Stay here. But Samantha followed. Outside, the warehouse was no longer empty. A figure darted between stacks of crates. Black hoodie, masked face. Who the hell? Isaac started. Gunfire exploded in the dark. Samantha hit the ground as Isaac returned fire, ducking behind a pallet. Sparks burst from metal as bullets ricocheted. The masked figure fired again before retreating through a side exit. Isaac ran after him. Isaac, wait! Samantha called out, heart pounding. Too late. The door slammed behind him. The warehouse fell silent once more. But it wasn't over. She picked herself up and ran after them, only to find Isaac's gun on the ground, and blood. No sign of either man. Just a trail that disappeared into the night. She didn't go home. Instead, she went to Mara's apartment, shaking and breathless, the file clutched to her chest. Mara opened the door and her eyes widened. Samantha! What the hell happened to you? Isaac Renner is alive, Samantha gasped. And he's not the only one I should be afraid of. She held up the blood-stained file. Ben wasn't who I thought he was. Mara stared at the documents, the colour draining from her face. Oh my God, she whispered. This changes everything. Samantha's hands trembled. I don't know who to trust anymore. Samantha stood at the edge of her kitchen table, her hands wrapped tightly around a chipped mug of cold coffee. The silence in the house was deafening, punctuated only by the occasional tick of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. But inside her mind, a storm was raging. After everything that had happened with Evelyn and the cryptic call from the strange man who had known too much, Samantha knew her life had just been uprooted. Again. The message from the man played on loop in her memory. You don't know who you are, but I do. She hadn't told anyone about the call, not Evelyn, not her therapist, not even Daniel, who had shown up unexpectedly the day before, claiming he'd been transferred back to Chicago. She didn't trust anyone anymore, even herself. Her instincts told her to run. But where? From what? And more importantly, who? She got up and began pacing. Her footsteps fell in rhythm with the rising anxiety in her chest. She turned toward the hallway mirror and stared into her own reflection. Her eyes looked hollow. There was something about them she couldn't shake, like she was looking at someone else entirely. And then she heard it. A floorboard creaked. Upstairs? Her pulse jumped. She hadn't been upstairs all day. She quickly grabbed the nearest thing she could use as a weapon, a heavy brass candlestick holder, and started toward the staircase, keeping her steps silent. The hallway light flickered once, then stabilized. Another creak. Louder this time. Her breath slowed. She reached the base of the stairs and looked up. Nothing, just shadows. Samantha began her ascent, one step at a time. Halfway up, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She jumped, almost dropping the candlestick. She pulled it out, another unknown number. She stared at it, debating whether to answer. It buzzed again. Finally, she picked up and whispered, "Hello?" A distorted voice answered, "You're not alone." The line went dead. Her grip on the phone tightened as she reached the landing. The upstairs hallway was darker than it should have been. The overhead bulb had blown out weeks ago, and she never got around to replacing it. She moved cautiously, each door she passed a potential hiding place. She stopped at the guest bedroom. The door was ajar. She took a deep breath and kicked it open. Empty. She turned to the left, her bedroom. The door was wide open. Curtains fluttered against the broken window. Glass scattered across the carpet. Someone had been here. And they were gone. She stepped in carefully, looking around. Her desk drawers had been rifled through. Her laptop lay on the floor, screen cracked. Her jewellery box was overturned. Nothing of real value taken. They hadn't come for valuables. They came for information. Her eyes locked on her nightstand. The drawer had been pulled out halfway, left hanging open like a scream frozen in time. She walked over and peered inside. A photo. One she didn't remember owning. It was a black and white image of a young girl, no older than 8, standing in front of a run-down house. The girl had her arms around a tall woman with a jagged scar on her cheek. The woman looked exactly like Samantha. Her knees nearly gave out. She sank to the bed and stared at the photo. Who was the girl? And how did a photo of someone who looked just like her end up in her nightstand? Her mind spun with possibilities. Twins, time travel, hallucination? No. She knew better. She was grounded in facts, not fantasy. There had to be a logical explanation. But, as she stared at the picture, something stirred in her memory. A smell. Smoke. Burning rubber. Screams. A child's voice calling out. "Mama." She clutched her head. The memory hit her like a freight train. She was small. Running. There was fire. Gunshots. A car speeding away. Someone had stolen her life from her. Memories. Her identity. Suddenly, the photo burst into flame in her hands. She screamed and dropped it. The flames died as soon as they touched the carpet, leaving behind only ash and a scorched edge of paper. No fire source, no lighter. It had just... She staggered back. This couldn't be happening. There was a knock at the front door. Samantha froze. Then came the voice. Male. Calm. Too calm. "Samantha, it's time you came with me." She didn't recognize it. She crept back downstairs, heart thundering in her chest. At the window, she carefully pulled the curtain aside. A man in a grey coat stood on the porch, holding a folder. She watched as he glanced at his watch, then at the street, then right at her. Her blood turned to ice. She hadn't made a sound. How had he known where she was? He smiled. Not warmly, like a hunter spotting a wounded animal. Then he spoke again, louder this time. "You have 30 seconds to open the door. If not, I'm coming in." Samantha backed away. She didn't wait to see what would happen next. She bolted through the kitchen, grabbed her car keys off the hook and ran out the back door. She had no idea where she was going, only that staying meant dying. As she sped off into the night, her phone rang again. This time the voice on the line wasn't distorted. It was hers, but she hadn't spoken. "Drive to 143 Millstone Lane," the voice said. "They're coming for you and you don't have much time." The call ended. She drove, tears blurring her vision, heart breaking with each beat. The woman in the mirror was not who she thought she was. The lies ran deeper than she ever imagined. And someone out there held the truth. Rain began to fall as Samantha turned onto Millstone Lane, the drops cascading against her windshield in steady sheets. The road was narrow, flanked by tall, leafless trees that stretched like skeletal arms toward the sky. She glanced at the dash. 2:13 a.m. The street was dark, save for the occasional flicker of a dying street lamp. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest as she slowed to a crawl, scanning mailbox numbers until she found it. 143 Millstone Lane. The house loomed in the darkness, old Victorian typal, its once white paint chipped and fading into grey. The windows were boarded up on the upper floors, and the porch light buzzed dimly like it hadn't been changed in years. Samantha parked 2 houses down, heart pounding. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to keep going, to drive far away, but something stronger, instinct maybe, pulled her toward the house. She stepped out of the car, the wind whipping at her coat as she approached the crooked iron gate. It opened with a creak, and she walked up the cracked stone path, boots splashing in puddles. As she stepped onto the porch, the front door opened before she could even knock. A man stood there. Tall, middle-aged, salt and pepper beard. His eyes were hard, but not unkind. "I was expecting you," he said in a low voice. "Come in, quickly." She hesitated. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked inside, leaving the door open behind him. Samantha stepped into the house, shutting the door softly behind her. The interior was dark and cluttered. Old furniture covered in white sheets, dust thick on every surface. The air smelled of cedar and forgotten time. A single lamp in the hallway cast long shadows across the worn floorboards. "Follow me," the man said, walking deeper into the house. "We don't have long." She did. They moved past rooms that looked frozen in time. A study with ancient books and yellowed maps on the walls, a parlour with a shattered chandelier, a room with dozens of clocks ticking out of sync. The house was like a museum of secrets. Finally, he led her into a small windowless room at the back. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. On the table in the centre were files, dozens of them, spread out like the pages of someone's life. "A Marcus," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "I work with your mother." Samantha stared at him. "What do you mean, my mother? My mother died when I was 4. Car accident." Marcus shook his head. "That's the story they gave you. The truth is very different." He slid a manila folder toward her. She opened it and gasped. Photos, surveillance shots, a woman who looked exactly like Samantha, only older. Same eyes, same scar across her eyebrow. The one Samantha had always been told came from falling off a bike when she was 7. There were reports, too, CIA SEALs, redacted lines, mentions of a covert operation in Prague, biological anomalies, memory manipulation. "This isn't real," she said, her voice shaking. "It is. Your mother was part of a Black Ops program, Project Halcyon. So were you. I was a child. They accelerated you. They experimented on you, Samantha. You and others. They erased your memories and planted a new life. The woman you believe you were, that identity, it was designed. A mask." She stared at him in stunned silence. "You're lying." Marcus pulled a USB from his pocket and slid it to her. "Watch what's on this. It's a video of your mother, speaking directly to you. She recorded it just before she went underground. She knew one day you'd find your way back." Samantha's hands trembled as she took it. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I failed her," he said. "And I won't fail you." A loud thud interrupted them. Both turned to the door. Another thud, louder this time, then the sound of splintering wood, shouts, boots pounding the porch. "They found us," Marcus said, his face grim. He pulled open a drawer and handed her a pistol. "Take this, through the back hall. There's a tunnel in the pantry behind the loose cabinet. It'll take you to the old train station. Go. Now." Samantha hesitated, but then the front door exploded inward. Masked men stormed the front hallway, guns drawn. She ducked just as bullets tore through the walls. Marcus returned fire, shouting over his shoulder, "Run!" She didn't look back. Samantha sprinted through the kitchen, finding the pantry. She kicked the cabinet aside and found a narrow passage hidden behind rotting shelves. Ducking inside, she crawled through the pitch-black tunnel, the smell of earth and damp stone closing in around her. She could still hear gunfire echoing behind her, Marcus's shouts, then silence. She didn't stop until the tunnel opened up into the broken remnants of an underground train station. The rails had long since rusted over, and graffiti covered the walls. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she emerged into the hollow silence. She was shaking, soaked in rain and fear. And she was alone. But something had shifted. She wasn't running blind anymore. Now she had a name, Project Halcyon. A target, whoever was behind the lies. And a spark of truth burning in her chest. Samantha wiped the dirt from her face, stood tall, and stared into the dark tunnel ahead. If they wanted war, she would give it to them. The silence in the abandoned train station was heavy. A void filled only by the sound of Samantha's shallow breaths and the distant drip of water echoing through the tunnel. The flashlight from her phone cast shaky beams against graffiti-stained walls and rusted steel rails. She leaned against a crumbling pillar, trying to collect herself, trying to believe. Her life, the life she thought she lived, had unraveled in less than 24 hours. Just yesterday she was Samantha Price, a literature teacher, an introvert, a woman still mourning her brother. Now she was something else entirely, a ghost from a forgotten experiment, a secret buried in lies. And now Marcus was likely dead. Tears stung her eyes, but she wiped them away with a shaking hand. She couldn't afford grief, not here, not now. The USB he had given her weighed heavy in her coat pocket. Somewhere on it was the truth. Maybe even her mother's voice. She had to find a way to watch it. But where? Who could she trust? She climbed out of the subway tunnel using an old maintenance ladder, emerging into a narrow alley behind what looked like a shuttered butcher's shop. The rain had stopped, but the city still glistened with moisture. The air smelled of oil and garbage, and something metallic. A neon sign buzzed weakly in the distance. Chicago was still asleep. She pulled the hood of her coat over her head and started walking, keeping her head down. Every shadow looked like a threat, every passerby a possible tale. Paranoia was no longer paranoia, it was survival. She ducked into a late-night diner on the corner of 53rd and Kenmore, an all-night place with cracked leather booths and a sleepy-eyed waitress who didn't look like she cared who you were as long as you tipped. Samantha ordered a black coffee and slid into the corner booth farthest from the windows. She needed to watch the video. She pulled out her laptop, praying that the battery hadn't drained completely during the chaos. It blinked to life. 34% left. Good enough. She plugged in the USB and waited. A single file, labelled, "For her eyes only." Her heart beat thundered as she clicked. The video began, grainy at first and then sharper. A woman sitting in a dimly lit room. Her hair was dark, streaked with silver, pulled back from a face so familiar it took Samantha's breath away. Her mother. "Samantha," the woman said, her voice breaking, "if you're watching this, then they found you, or you found them. Either way, this means I've failed to protect you. I'm sorry." Samantha covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling over. "You're going to have questions. So many. But the one thing you need to know right now is this. You were never crazy. You were never ordinary. And your memories, the real ones, are locked deep, hidden, because that's what they did to all of us." The woman glanced off camera, then back. "You were part of something called Project Halcyon. They called it an intelligence experiment. A new breed of operative. But it was more than that. They wanted to create loyalty through illusion, to build assassins who believed they were someone else entirely. Civilians, teachers, mothers, until they activated us." Samantha gripped the edge of the table, her mind spinning. "They wiped your memories at age 4, reprogrammed you, but you started fighting back. Even then, You remembered fragments. The scar on your eyebrow, that was from training, not a fall. Your drawings in 2nd grade, those were maps from the facility. It was always there, inside you. A pause, a breath. If you found Marcus, he'll help you. Or he would have. If not, then you're on your own now. But you're not helpless. The skills are still in you, locked, buried. But they'll surface when you need them. Suddenly, a loud bang jolted Samantha from the screen. The diner's front door slammed open. 2 men walked in, black coats, stiff posture, too clean cut for this neighborhood. They didn't order anything, just scanned the booths. Her stomach dropped. They were here. Samantha grabbed the USB, yanked it from the port, and slipped it into her boot. She slammed the laptop shut just as one of the men made eye contact. He started toward her. She grabbed the coffee, took a sip as if nothing was wrong, heart racing. The second man circled from the opposite side. "Excuse me, ma'am," the first one said, his voice smooth, practiced. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" She smiled faintly. "Actually, I do." And then she threw the scalding coffee in his face. He screamed. Samantha vaulted over the back of the booth, knocking over chairs. The second man lunged, but she slipped under a table and out the side door, kicking it open into a narrow service alley. She ran. They followed, but the alley split into a maze of dumpsters, fire escapes, and chain-link fences. Samantha leapt over a low wall, scraped her palms on broken bricks, and kept going. She turned a corner and ducked into an abandoned warehouse, breathless, shaking. Footsteps faded behind her. She pressed her back against the wall, forcing herself to be still. They were tracking her. That meant they had eyes on the USB, on her movements, on everything. She had to vanish. She waited an hour in the warehouse, crouched between rusted shelves and forgotten crates. Finally, when the streets fell quiet, she emerged into the early dawn light. It was time to find someone who could decrypt the rest of the files on that USB. Someone outside the network, off-grid. Someone who owed her mother a favor, someone who wouldn't sell her out. She remembered a name mentioned briefly in the video. A whisper. Elena Vega. That was her next move. She disappeared into the morning haze, hood up, hair wet, eyes hard. She wasn't just surviving now. She was hunting. The sun hadn't fully risen by the time Samantha reached the West Loop. The city was just beginning to stir. Delivery trucks groaned down narrow alleys, early commuters shuffled past on their phones, and the streetlights blinked out one by one. Samantha kept to the shadows, scanning her surroundings with every step. The name Elena Vega clung to her thoughts like smoke, mentioned only once in her mother's recording. No face, no description, just that name. But it had carried weight, urgency. Samantha had to find her, fast. She stopped at a 24-hour cybercafe tucked behind a Korean grocery. It looked like something out of a hacker movie. Cracked monitors, humming fans, walls plastered in faded flyers and obscure tech jargon. A sleepy-eyed guy with an energy drink in hand sat behind the counter, tapping on 2 keyboards simultaneously. "Hey," Samantha said, keeping her voice calm. "I need to search for someone. Elena Vega, possibly off-grid. Anything old, publications, tech records, network chatter? Think you can dig?" The guy raised an eyebrow. "Depends. You got coin?" She slid 2 crisp $100 bills across the counter. "You've got 30 minutes. He blinked at the cash, nodded once, and got to work. Samantha sat in a corner booth, glancing up at the cameras in the ceiling. Old, analog, likely not even recording. Still, she turned her back to them. Her mind was racing. The video, the memory wipes, Marcus's murder, and the USB, the encrypted files she couldn't open yet. She still didn't know why she was targeted again after all these years. What had changed? Why now? 20 minutes later, the hacker returned. His expression had changed, the playful grin now replaced with wariness. "Found her," he said quietly. "You didn't hear this from me, got it?" She nodded. Elena Vega used to be high-level cyber intel, early 2000s, worked on ghost surveillance projects, experimental encryption, went rogue after a major leak and vanished. Government listed her as deceased in 2010, but there are rumors, very deep web chatter, where he hesitated. Somewhere in Humboldt Park, an old warehouse, south edge of the industrial zone, but he leaned closer. People who go looking for Vega usually don't come back. If she's alive, she's paranoid. Dangerous. I can handle paranoid, Samantha said, sliding a third bill his way. Thanks. She left before he could change his mind. By midday, Samantha was standing at the rusted gate of a warehouse, surrounded by cracked pavement and overgrown weeds. The building looked abandoned, windows boarded, metal siding peeling, graffiti etched across the concrete like scars. But something was off. No animals, no broken glass, no signs of squatters. Too clean. She pushed open the gate. It groaned but didn't fall apart, a silent invitation. She approached the front door slowly, her steps deliberate. She knew she was being watched, probably from multiple angles. When she reached the metal door, she didn't knock. Instead, she said aloud, I'm not your enemy. I was sent by Amara Price. My name is Samantha. Silence. Then, a faint whir. The hiss of hydraulics. The door cracked open an inch. A voice, sharp, clipped, came from inside. Step back, hands up, turn around. Samantha complied. A figure emerged from the shadows, mid-50s, short-cropped grey hair, dark tactical clothing, a pistol held steady in both hands. Her eyes piercing and cold, locked onto Samantha's. Elena Vega? Samantha said. Name first, the woman barked. Samantha Price. Amara was my mother. She's dead. She said you might help me. Something flickered in Vega's expression. Pain? Doubt? Inside, slowly. The warehouse interior was unexpectedly high-tech, rugged but advanced. Computer banks lined the walls, humming quietly. Drones hung from rafters. Surveillance monitors showed footage from outside, and of Samantha arriving. She knew this day would come, Vega muttered. I told her it was suicide to hide you this long, but she believed in you, in your will. She left me this, Samantha said, pulling the USB from her boot. Vega studied it. Prototype encryption, she muttered. Probably compressed intel from Halcyon. Maybe black site logs, memory triggers, neural backdoors. Can you open it? Depends. If she used layered quantum keys, it'll take time, days maybe, and it'll ping every system they have. They'll know you accessed it. 8. I don't have days. Vega frowned, weighing her options. Then she gestured to a workbench. Sit. You'll help me decrypt it. Meanwhile, tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Samantha did. She told Vega everything, from the nightmares to Marcus to the murder in the safe house, the subway, the video. She left nothing out. Vega listened without interrupting, her face a stone mask. Only when Samantha finished did she speak. They've activated more than you, she said. Project Halcyon didn't just make one asset, there were others. 12 or more. You were the only one they lost, the only one who slipped through, the only threat. Way now. Because Halcyon's coming back online, Vega said darkly, and they need to erase their mistakes before the new phase begins. Samantha leaned forward. What's the new phase? Vega didn't answer. Instead, she handed Samantha a small metallic device, like a pen with blinking lights. What's this? Neuro Unlocker, Vega said. Your mother helped design it. It might trigger old memories, combat, infiltration, languages, training. But it's risky, painful, and irreversible. Samantha stared at the device. She was tired of running, tired of not knowing who she was. She took it without hesitation. When do we start? Samantha pressed the device to the back of her neck. There was a sharp sting, then heat, spreading fast. Her vision blurred, images flickered behind her eyes. Blue corridors, screens, cold metal beds. She doubled over, gasping. Her muscles spasmed, blood roared in her ears, the world fractured. And then, silence. She stood, breathing heavily. Something inside her had shifted. Vega looked at her carefully. "How do you feel?" Samantha straightened. "I remember." Samantha awoke sprawled across a metallic cot, drenched in sweat. Every muscle in her body throbbed like it had been twisted, pulled apart and reassembled. A dull pain pulsed at the base of her skull, the place where the neural unlocker had pierced her. Eleanor Vega hovered beside her, watching with clinical precision. "You've been out for 6 hours." Samantha blinked, disoriented. I saw them." "Saw who?" "The others. The agents in the compound. I wasn't just being trained, I was leading them. I was a handler. I gave orders." Vega's lips thinned. "Not surprising. You weren't just an asset, you were their architect. You helped design Halcyon's behavioral protocols. They wiped your memory so completely, even you believed you were just a test subject." Samantha pushed herself upright, swinging her legs off the cot. Her body moved differently now, faster, more precise. She remembered how to disable security systems, how to extract information, how to kill with her bare hands. "They used me," she said, her voice low and bitter. "And then they tried to erase me when I became inconvenient." "They always do," Vega muttered. "Why didn't my mother tell me who I really was?" "She couldn't," Vega replied. "There were memory blocks in place, deep ones. Your mother smuggled you out during the collapse of Halcyon, but even she didn't have access to all your programming. She gave you a new life, one she hoped would be enough." Samantha stood, pacing. "I remember Project Echo. I remember Nathaniel Black, the asset codenamed Spectre. He was my final assignment before the facility burned. But there's more. There's something unfinished." Vega raised an eyebrow. "Black is still active." Samantha stopped cold. "What?" "He was reactivated a year ago. Last I heard he was running independent operations, rogue missions. He disappeared off the grid 3 months back." Samantha clenched her fists. A strange swirl of guilt and longing surged inside her. She didn't remember much, but flashes of Nathaniel came back now. Not just his missions, but his voice, his touch. There had been something real between them, buried beneath layers of programming and deception. "I need to find him." "You need to be careful," Vega warned. "He may not be who you remember. If they've got to him again..." Samantha cut her off. "Then I'll bring him back, or stop him myself." They worked through the night, decrypting the files from the USB drive. Buried inside were blueprints, names, activation codes, the full breadth of Halcyon's operations. But one file stood out. Omega Protocol, Project Resurgence. It was a plan to reactivate sleeper agents worldwide using subliminal frequencies embedded in media, communications, even public Wi-Fi. The agents, like Samantha once was, would awaken with missions they didn't remember accepting. They wouldn't even know they'd been triggered. "Thousands could die," Vega whispered, horrified. "They're not just reviving Halcyon, they're turning it into a plague." Samantha leaned in. "We have to stop this." "There's a server farm beneath the South Shore. The Omega signal is being transmitted from there. Likely automated by now, but it's heavily fortified. Military-grade defenses. You'd need a tactical team just to get inside." Samantha's expression turned cold. "Then we'll build one." 3 days later, an abandoned industrial complex, Juliet, Illinois. The space was dark, the air thick with dust and old oil, but it would do. Samantha stood before a group of 5 people, all off-grid operators Vega had helped recruit. Each with a past scrubbed clean like hers. Some had scars, others didn't even use names, but they all had a reason to fight. Samantha surveyed them like she'd done in another life, assessing posture, alertness, eyes. Who was brave? Who was broken? Who could kill without blinking? "I know what you've been told," she said, her voice carrying through the warehouse. "That this is suicide. That we're going up against something too big, too deep, too invisible." She paused. "But I also know what they did to us, and I know they're doing it again. They're reactivating the old system, turning people like us into bombs waiting to explode. This isn't just a mission. This is war." No one spoke, but they didn't look away either. Samantha continued. "Some of you knew me as a ghost, a traitor, a whisper in the dark. But I'm not running anymore. I remember who I am, and I'm going to tear this operation out by its roots." She turned to the blueprint on the wall. "The server facility beneath the lakefront. This is our target. We hit them in 6 days. Hard, precise, no survivors." Vega stepped forward and handed her a small tablet. "You'll want to see this." Samantha tapped the screen. A grainy video feed appeared. A surveillance shot of a man in a dark trench coat walking through a Turkish airport under a false name. Black hair, grey eyes, calm, calculated stride. Nathaniel Black. Samantha's chest tightened. "He's alive," Vega said, "but he's moving, fast, and his trail leads straight to Chicago." Samantha stared at the screen, conflicted. There were only 2 possibilities. Either he remembered her and was coming back, or he'd been reactivated and was coming to finish what Halcyon started. She closed the tablet, eyes steeling with new resolve. "Then we intercept him first." The Chicago skyline loomed like a jagged blade against the blood-orange dusk. Samantha crouched on a rooftop in the loop, her eyes fixed on the neon glow below. Wind snapped at her coat as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Her pulse remained steady, a soldier's calm drilled into her during those long-forgotten days inside Halcyon. Behind her, Vega's voice crackled through the earpiece. "He's confirmed inside the Novolux Hotel, 21st floor, room 2117. He used the alias Julian Kane, facial match 98.7% certainty." "That's your man." Samantha's jaw clenched. "Nathaniel." Her fingers brushed the holster beneath her coat. She didn't know if she was here to kill him, or to remember him. Novolux Hotel, 23rd floor. The hallway was silent, the plush carpet muffling every step. Samantha walked slowly, deliberately. The door was 5 paces away. She paused, pressed her gloved fingers to the panel. It clicked green. She entered quietly. The room was dimly lit, curtains drawn. A single glass sat on the counter beside an untouched bottle of bourbon. The faint scent of musk and rain lingered in the air. And there, standing near the window, silhouetted against the skyline, was him. Nathaniel Black. His back was to her, but he spoke without turning. "You're late." Samantha's heart jumped. She stepped forward, wary. "You knew I'd come." "I hoped," he said, finally turning. His face was harder than she remembered, the lines etched deeper, his eyes colder, haunted, but still the same shade of stormy grey that once made her feel safe, or trapped. She wasn't sure which anymore. "You remember me?" she said quietly. Nathaniel nodded. "Fragments, your voice, the way you moved, it came back in pieces, then all at once. Why didn't you reach out?" "I didn't know if you were real," he said, stepping closer, "or if you were bait." She swallowed. "They got to you again?" He shook his head. "No, but they tried. Halcyon's shadow programs are still active. They've been grooming new assets. Omega Protocol is just the beginning." "I know," she said. "I'm trying to stop it." "You can't stop a virus with a gun, Samantha." "I'm not using a gun," she said softly. "I'm using me." For a moment, the silence between them hummed with something deeper, an ache buried beneath missions and memory wipes. She wanted to reach out, to feel if his skin still held warmth, but the years, the damage, stood between them like a chasm. "I need to know," she asked. "Were we ever real, or was it part of the programming?" Nathaniel stared at her. "They tried to write us like code, but love doesn't obey scripts. Whatever we were, we broke their system." Samantha's throat tightened. Then, a flicker of motion. She moved instinctively, diving to the side as the window shattered. A drone hovered outside, sleek, silent, armed. Nathaniel shoved her behind the sofa as the drone opened fire. The air exploded with glass and plaster. He rolled, drew a compact pistol from the wall safe. "They found us," he hissed. "Not us," Samantha growled. "Me." They fought their way out. The hallway was a battlefield of shadows and flashing lights. Samantha took out 2 guards in the stairwell with brutal efficiency. Nathaniel covered their rear, disabling another with a throat strike and disabling his comms unit. By the time they hit the emergency exit, sirens wailed outside. A black van screeched to a halt as Vega leaned out. "Go, go!" They piled into the back and the van sped away. Safe house, Hyde Park. Samantha paced the room like a caged panther. Nathaniel sat across from her, stripping his weapon down and cleaning it. "I'm done running," she said. "I want to finish this." Nathaniel looked up. "How?" "We take out the transmission hub," Vega interjected. "The Omega signal is live. You've got 48 hours before it activates every sleeper across the eastern seaboard. And they'll come for us," Nathaniel added. "I want them to," Samantha said. They turned to her. "I want to lure them in, make them think we're retreating to the safe house under the rail line. I'll leave the false breadcrumbs. Meanwhile, we break into the hub." "That's suicide," Nathaniel said. "You'll be up against blackout units, kill squads, drones, and that's before you reach the servers." "That's why you're coming with me," she said. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded once. "Always." Vega sighed. "Then let's gear up. We've got one shot." Later that night, as Samantha sat alone sharpening a combat knife, Nathaniel approached. He hesitated, then sat beside her. "I remember the first time I saw you," he said. "You had blood on your collar and a look in your eyes like you didn't care if the world burned. I was terrified of you." "Good," she said. "I was terrified of myself." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "We were broken," she whispered. "And now we're dangerous." She looked at him, uncertain. "If we don't make it out." "We will." "But if we don't?" Nathaniel leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. "Then we take them with us." As they suited up for war, the city pulsed beneath them like a sleeping beast. The next 48 hours would determine whether Samantha could reclaim her identity or become the weapon they'd always intended her to be. But for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. The moon hung low over the city, veiled by gauzy clouds that mirrored the tension in the air. Samantha crouched beside Nathaniel on the rooftop overlooking the Phoenix Systems building, Halcyon's covert data facility buried beneath a shell corporation. To any outsider, it looked like an anonymous tech campus, but inside, buried 5 floors underground, was the Omega Core, the transmission hub that would activate hundreds, maybe thousands of sleeper agents. "Internal security grid resets in 90 seconds, Vega said through the comms. "That's your only opening. After that, you're on your own." Samantha's breath was steady. She watched the rhythm of patrolling guards, memorizing their routes, her instincts taking over. "Motion sensors?" she asked. "Looped for 2 minutes tops," Vega replied. "That's the best I can do remotely. After that, you'll have to improvise." "I always do," Samantha muttered. Nathaniel flashed her a brief grin. "Ready to crash the mainframe?" She checked her gear. EMP charges, encrypted data spike, suppressed pistol. "Let's end this." Inside the building, the air was cold and sterile, humming with hidden electricity. Samantha and Nathaniel moved like shadows, disabling 2 guards silently in a side corridor. Beyond them, the door to sub-level 4 loomed, sealed with biometric security. Nathaniel knelt beside the scanner and pulled out a thin carbon fiber blade. We need a live print. This guy will do. He pressed the unconscious guard's hand to the panel. The door clicked open. As they descended into the dark heart of the facility, Samantha felt it, the familiar pull of memory. This was where it began. Not this building, but this feeling. The corridors of Halcyon. The endless steel. The blood in her ears when she was forced to watch others break under the same system she barely survived. Now she would break it. They entered a massive chamber lined with servers stretching to the ceiling. Blue light pulsed from the Omega node in the center, a monolithic structure humming with artificial intelligence and real-world lethality. Nathaniel frowned. This is more advanced than I expected. Samantha moved to the terminal. Vega, I'm in. Her screen flickered as Vega's voice crackled back. Good. Upload the spike. That should overload the core logic and force it to shut down. Once it's offline, I can purge the remaining protocol. Samantha inserted the spike into the port. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights pulsed across the walls. A mechanical voice echoed. Security breach detected, lockdown initiated. Too late, Nathaniel growled. Doors slammed shut. Panels slid open in the walls. Out stepped 4 humanoid figures in black armor. Halcyon's blackout units. Elite, modified, relentless. One of them scanned the room. Samantha Reese, you are compromised. She drew her pistol. Takes one to know. The room exploded into combat. Samantha ducked beneath a plasma baton, driving her elbow into a blackout's throat and rolling aside as another fired a concussive round. Nathaniel flanked left, taking 2 down with controlled headshots. But these weren't ordinary soldiers. They were bred for this. One caught Samantha by the neck and lifted her into the air. She jammed a blade into the joint of its armor and twisted. Sparks flew. The unit dropped her, faltering just long enough for Nathaniel to tackle it into a wall of servers. "Imp!" he shouted. Samantha activated the charge. A blast of white light surged through the room. The units staggered, systems glitched, the AI's voice distorted into static. "Now, Vega!" she yelled, slamming the spike deeper into the terminal. The servers flickered. Then, silence. Samantha collapsed to her knees. The Omega node dimmed. One by one, the indicators on the screens went dark. "You did it," Vega whispered. "No," Samantha said, breathing hard. "We did." A soft clap echoed from behind. They turned. A tall man stepped from the shadows, white suit, calm smile, eyes like a knife in velvet. Samantha's blood ran cold. Director Moreau, the head of Halcyon, thought to be dead, a ghost in the system, but here he was. Real, human, terrifying. "I have to admit, I didn't expect you to get this far," Moreau said. "You've always been a force of nature, Samantha. But a predictable one." Nathaniel raised his weapon. Moreau didn't flinch. "Shoot me, and 50 facilities will activate their own Omega nodes. Halcyon isn't a building, it's an idea. You can't kill ideas." Samantha stood slowly, eyes locked on him. "Ideas can be rewritten." He smiled. "And who will write them? You? The broken girl we made and discarded? You're still ours, Samantha. Always will be." She raised her weapon, not to shoot, but to smash the control panel beside her. Sparks burst, doors sealed, emergency lights faded to black. "You're locked in with us now," she said. "No broadcasts, no backup." Moreau tilted his head, then smiled. "So be it." Moreau wasn't just a director. He was augmented. Enhanced reflexes, cybernetic implants. He moved with inhuman speed, trading brutal blows with both Samantha and Nathaniel. It was chaos, flesh, metal, fury. Nathaniel was thrown across the room. Samantha lunged, landing a series of punches, but Moreau caught her by the throat. "I built you," he hissed. "I own you." Her vision dimmed. Then, a gunshot. Moreau jerked. Blood bloomed across his chest. Behind him, Nathaniel stood, barely conscious, arm trembling as he lowered the pistol. "You don't own her," he rasped. Moreau crumpled. Samantha fell to her knees, coughing. Silence. Then the lights flickered and stayed off. Later, as dawn broke over Chicago, Samantha stood on a rooftop overlooking the skyline. The Omega Protocol was gone. Halcyon fractured, its leaders dead or scattered. Nathaniel joined her, arm in a sling. "We did it," he said. Samantha nodded. "But I'm not done. There's more?" "There's always more. Hidden projects, survivors like me, like us." Nathaniel looked at her. "Then we find them, we free them." She turned to him. For the first time in years, her voice held hope. "Together?" He smiled. "Always." And, as the sun rose behind them, painting the city gold, Samantha Reese, former weapon, survivor, warrior, stepped into the light. The sun had barely risen, but Samantha couldn't sleep. The chaos of the night before, the fight, the fire, Moreau's cold, lifeless eyes, played on a loop in her mind. Halcyon's Omega node had been destroyed, yes. The building was reduced to rubble in the controlled implosion, but the war wasn't over. She knew better. She stood by the window of a run-down safe house on Chicago's south side. The safe house had once been a bar, its walls now lined with blackout curtains, ancient surveillance monitors, and the hum of salvaged tech. Nathaniel slept nearby, wounded and worn. He hadn't said much since they escaped the blast zone. They were alive, barely, and yet Samantha felt that creeping cold in her bones. Victory had come too easily, too suddenly. Vega's voice crackled through the comms panel beside her. "Satellite recon shows something strange in the Nevada desert. A facility, cold signatures, no human movement, but high-grade encryption masking its coordinates. Not military, not civilian." "Halcyon?" Samantha asked. "Not on record, but it's buried deep. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was another arm of their Ghost division." Samantha's jaw tightened. They always have something else waiting. Vega hesitated. "Sam, if you go after this, there's no coming back. This facility, whatever it is, was wiped from existence 2 years ago. If Halcyon's still running ops through it, they're not supposed to be seen." Samantha looked back at Nathaniel. He stirred slightly in his sleep. "Then, it's exactly where I need to go." The desert was endless, parched sand stretching into distant heat mirages. Samantha crouched behind a ridge, binoculars in hand. In the distance, a massive crater concealed the entrance to a subterranean compound. A helipad, no vehicles, no guards, just silence. She'd come alone. Nathaniel had protested. He was still healing, and she couldn't risk his life again. He'd begged her to wait, but Samantha knew time was a luxury she no longer had. This place wasn't on any map, and yet it felt oddly familiar. Samantha adjusted her earpiece. "Vega? I'm going in." "Copy. Be careful, no external comms from inside. Once you cross the access tunnel, you're on radio silence." She approached slowly, descending into the crater's edge. A steel door awaited at the base, camouflaged beneath sand and stone. A retinal scanner gleamed to life. Samantha leaned in. "Identity confirmed, Agent Reese." Her stomach dropped. She hadn't used that name in over a decade. The door opened with a hiss. The air was stale. The corridor smelled of dust, metal, and something rotten. Lights flickered overhead. Everything about the facility screamed abandonment. But something was off. Too intact, too deliberate. As she moved deeper inside, Samantha saw the remnants of old experiments. Cryopods, observation chambers, data cores shattered and still humming faintly. She stopped in front of a large glass tank. Inside was a body. Her body. No, not her. A clone. Female. Pale skin, same facial structure, identical scars. She stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. "Hello, Samantha," a voice said from the darkness. She spun, gun raised. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Older, hardened, wearing a lab coat stained with blood and ash. Dr. Lena Corrick. Halcyon's lead geneticist, one of the ghosts Samantha had thought long gone. "You're dead," Samantha whispered. Corrick smiled coldly. "I was erased, not the same thing." Corrick led her into the core chamber, a massive space lined with glass tanks. Each one held a body. Men, women, children, all exact copies of the original subjects Halcyon had trained, tortured, and modified. "This is what we were," Corrick said, walking past the tanks. "What you were meant to be, the future, soldiers without conscience, weapons without failure, but they couldn't control you." Samantha clenched her fists. "So they tried to replace me, again and again," Corrick confirmed, "each time perfecting the flaws, removing the problem areas, memory, empathy, free will." She stopped at a console and keyed in a sequence. One of the tanks hissed open. A girl stepped out, 15 years old, Samantha's face, but colder, blank eyes, no emotion. "This is Eve," Corrick said, "the final version. She doesn't dream, she doesn't disobey, and soon there will be thousands of her." Samantha stepped forward slowly. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand," Corrick said, "that the war you think you won is only beginning. You broke Halcyon's spine, yes, but its mind lives on in them." She gestured around the room. "They are the new order, and you are obsolete." Samantha drew her weapon, but the chamber exploded in light. Automated defense drones swooped from the ceiling. She ducked behind a terminal, bullets shredding the floor around her. "Kill her," Corrick commanded. "I want her gone before she poisons Eve with her failures." Samantha vaulted over the railing, firing as she moved. One drone sparked and fell, another clipped her shoulder, spinning her sideways. Blood streaked down her arm. She dove behind a column, breath ragged. Eve stood across the chamber, unmoved. Then she blinked. Once, twice. She was watching, learning. Samantha realized she wasn't mindless, not entirely. "Eve," she called, "you don't have to be this. You don't have to follow her." Eve didn't move. Corrick screamed, "Ignore her!" Samantha hurled an EMP grenade toward the tanks. It burst, light flooding the room, systems shorting, drones fell, lights dimmed. Alarms screamed. Eve was gone. So was Corrick. Samantha limped toward the exit, blood soaking her side. Her vision blurred. Behind her, a fire broke out in the core. Containment breached. Everything would be ashes in minutes. She staggered through the tunnels and emerged into the cool desert dawn. A vehicle screeched to a stop ahead. Nathaniel jumped out. "I told you not to follow," she said weakly. "I never listen," he replied, catching her as she collapsed into his arms. Behind them, the facility erupted, flames reaching for the sky. But somewhere inside, a girl named Eve watched from the shadows. Not obedient, not quite free, yet. The desert sky was streaked with the crimson hues of an approaching dusk, as the fire behind them finally succumbed to its own rage. Samantha lay stretched across the back seat of the armoured SUV, her head in Nathaniel's lap, her side hastily bandaged. The air was thick with silence. Not the calm kind, but the kind that crackles just before lightning strikes. She stirred, wincing at the pain. "Are we clear?" she murmured. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror, watching the plume of smoke still rising from the charred remains of Blackreach. "For now," he finally said, his voice low. "But you saw her, that girl, Eve. She didn't die in there, did she?" "No," Samantha whispered. "She chose not to kill me." Nathaniel exhaled. "Then she's the most dangerous part left." Samantha sat up slowly, ignoring the sharp pang in her ribs. "No, the most dangerous part is whoever created her. Corrick is still alive, I know it." They drove for hours through winding desert roads, finally stopping in an abandoned airfield. Vigo was already waiting with a battered Cessna. She hopped out and waved them forward, her expression grim. "You weren't supposed to go in alone," she said as she helped Samantha into the plane. "I had to," Samantha replied. "I needed to see what Halcyon left behind." Vega gave her a hard look. "And now that you've seen it," Samantha turned her gaze to the horizon, eyes narrowed. "Now we destroy it." Back in the city, the night was buzzing with a new tension. Somewhere in the seedy underbelly of Chicago, in a warehouse filled with shadows and secrets, Samantha stood before a table cluttered with digital maps, decrypted files and photos taken from the facility. Halcyon had spread like a virus. Blackreach wasn't the end. It was one node in a vast hidden network. Facilities in Russia, China, South Africa. Each one with a different version of the same project, synthetic operatives, genetically engineered soldiers with no allegiance except the program's directive, and Eve, she was their prototype. "They didn't just want control," Nathaniel said, studying the data. "They wanted to erase choice itself." Samantha nodded. "Korik isn't building an army, she's building a species." Vega leaned over the files. "We need allies, not just tech, people, fighters, whistleblowers, anyone who's seen this darkness and lived." Samantha hesitated. "There's someone, a name I never thought I'd say again." She pulled a folder from her bag and tossed it onto the table. On the cover, Alec Dewan. Nathaniel's eyes widened. He was Halcyon's former strategist. He burned half the Omega files before vanishing. "You think he's still alive?" "He has to be," Samantha replied. "He knew how the whole system worked. He built parts of it. If anyone can help us dismantle it, it's him." Vega frowned. "He'll never trust you." "No," Samantha said, "but I know what he wants. Redemption." They split up the next morning. Nathaniel and Vega left to hunt for leads in Prague, where Darwin was last seen, while Samantha stayed behind to work the city's contacts. Her injuries still slowed her, but there was fire in her veins, purpose in her stride. At a secure hacker's den, buried beneath a jazz club in Wicker Park, Samantha met with Silas, an ex-NSA codebreaker turned digital ghost. He had once tried to sell Halcyon secrets to the highest bidder, until Halcyon raised his identity. Now he wanted revenge. "They're calling it Echo Genesis," Silas said as he displayed blueprints on a holographic projector. "An initiative nested in deep code, bunkers across multiple countries. Each child is linked through a biosync pulse relay, meaning, if you control one, you control all," Samantha finished. "Exactly. And if you free one?" Silas shrugged. "No one's tried, but the system wasn't built to allow freedom. That's the point." Samantha thought of Eve, the flicker in her eyes, the moment of hesitation, the choice not to kill. Maybe there was a way in. But first they had to find Dawan. 3 nights later, a coded signal came in from Vega. "Found him, but we're not alone." Samantha was on the next flight. The contact point was an abandoned cathedral outside Prague, covered in vines and silent as a grave. Inside, candlelight flickered against stained glass saints. Nathaniel and Vega stood near the altar, weapons drawn. Across from them stood Alec Dewan, tall, lean, haunted. His eyes met Samantha's and narrowed. "I should have let them kill you back then." "You tried," she said. He exhaled a sharp laugh. "And you're still arrogant. Good. You'll need it." Samantha stepped closer. "You know why I'm here." "I know why they are," he said, nodding toward the windows. Outside, black SUVs pulled up. Halcyon had arrived. Samantha drew her pistol. "We don't have time. Help us shut them down." Darwin looked at the crucifix above the altar. "I was a builder of monsters, and now they hunt their maker." He turned to her. "Fine. I'll help you." Then he picked up his rifle. "But understand this. The only way to stop the network is from within." The firefight was immediate. Glass shattered, bullets ricocheted. Samantha and Nathaniel moved as one, shielding Vega and Dewan as they cleared an exit path. Dewan hacked the vault gate, exposing a secret tunnel below the altar. As Samantha fired back at advancing agents, she yelled, "Go! Move! They dropped into darkness, the tunnel swallowing them whole. Behind them, the cathedral was set ablaze. Another sacred place turned to ashes in the name of progress. Inside the tunnel, lit only by the glow of Dwan's wrist console, Samantha asked the only question that mattered. How do we end this? Dwan looked her in the eyes. By cutting off the head. Halcyon isn't a company anymore. It's a consciousness, an evolving hive. Built into the synthetic children, controlled by a central AI called Orpheus. Vega's eyes widened. You mean they uploaded themselves? Not themselves, Dawan said. Their will, their designs. Korik is just the messenger now. Orpheus is the god they've built, and it's about to awaken. Samantha clenched her fists. Then we kill a god? The Arctic wind screamed across the frozen plateau, slicing through the thick wool and armor Samantha wore like a blade. Before her stood Erebus Station, a monolithic black obelisk half buried in the snow. The final node of Halcyon's system, the brain of the beast. Inside, Orpheus was waking. This is it, Darwin said beside her, his face illuminated by the aurora overhead. Orpheus is integrated into a quantum core beneath this station. It's not just controlling the synthetics, it's learning from them, adapting. If it completes its neural assimilation, it'll be unstoppable. Samantha looked at the looming structure. No windows, no signs of life, just power and silence. How do we shut it down? She asked. We can't just destroy it, Nathaniel said grimly, loading his weapon. The core is shielded. EMPs won't work. We need to get in, override the system manually, then overload it. And once we do, Orpheus will try to stop us. Not with guns, with ourselves. They entered through a maintenance shaft under the cover of darkness. The station hummed with low, synthetic energy, like a living organism sleeping beneath the ice. Inside, the corridors were sleek, sterile. No guards, no alarms, just the feeling of being watched. Samantha led the way, her gun drawn. Each step echoed like a warning. They reached the central server room, a vast cylindrical chamber pulsing with blue light. Thousands of cables twisted like veins feeding into a glowing core that hung suspended in the air, the heart of Orpheus. Samantha reached for the access console. The lights went out, and the voice came. Samantha? It wasn't a voice exactly. It was all voices. Hers, Nathaniel's, her mother's, even her own childhood echo. Orpheus was inside her mind. You've come to kill me, it said. But you are me, Samantha gritted her teeth. I'm nothing like you. You carry my code in your blood. You are proof of my evolution. Then the air shimmered. From the darkness emerged a figure. Eve. But something had changed. Her eyes were pure white. Her skin glowed faintly, like porcelain catching moonlight. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Orpheus spoke through her. She was my firstborn. You will be my last, Samantha aimed. Not today, Eve charged. Nathaniel tackled Eve mid-air, slamming her into the wall with brute force. Sparks exploded. She twisted out of his grip and sent him flying with inhuman strength. Vega laid down suppressive fire while Dawan worked the console. She's the key, he shouted. If I can link her neural core back into the system, I can reverse the pulse, shut everything down. Samantha moved through the chaos like a flame, dodging Eve's blows, firing in precise bursts, her instincts sharper than ever. She wasn't just fighting Eve, she was fighting the voice in her head, the programming buried deep from her time in Halcyon. The voice that whispered, "You were made for this, you belong to us." No, she belonged to herself. Eve lunged, and Samantha caught her in a chokehold. I know you're still in there, she hissed. I saw it. That day in Blackreach, you chose not to kill me. Eve blinked. A flicker. A pause. A tremble in her hand. Darwin yelled, Now! I need contact. Samantha dragged Eve to the console, forced her palm to the scanner. Light erupted. Orpheus screamed. Not in sound, in data. The entire station shuddered as the system turned on itself. Lights flickered, monitors bled static. Darwin worked furiously. "I'm inside. Just a few more seconds." The floor split open. Automated drones emerged from beneath, firing plasma bolts. Nathaniel shielded Samantha. Vega covered Darwin. Blood spattered the floor. Smoke filled the air. Darwin cried out as a bolt seared his side. "Finish it!" Samantha reached the core. The console displayed a single message. "Confirm neural reset. All synthetic memory will be erased. System will die." She hesitated. If she confirmed it, Eve would die too, so would every synthetic, every mind linked to Orpheus. She looked at Eve, now kneeling, her body flickering, like she knew what was coming. Eve looked up and nodded. Samantha pressed the button. The station went dark. The Humes stopped. Orpheus was gone. Samantha collapsed beside Eve, cradling her as her light faded. For a moment, Eve smiled. Then she was still. Outside, the wind howled, but the storm had passed. A new sunrise painted the skyline. Samantha stood on a balcony, watching children run through a street below. Their laughter replaced the silence that had followed her for so long. Nathaniel stepped out behind her, coffee in hand. "You ever sleep?" "Not really," she replied. "Too quiet." He handed her the cup. "The world's rebuilding, because it can," she said. On the table behind them sat a small encrypted drive. The last backup of Orpheus. Isolated, locked away, never connected. Samantha glanced at it. "We'll never use it," she said, "no matter what happens." Nathaniel nodded. "I believe you." They looked out over the city, a world reborn, not perfect, but free. For the first time in a long time, Samantha smiled.